you grow up with the NES, PlayStation, Star Wars, cartoons, and 80s TV? Do you like to think who would win in a fight between Batman and the Master Chief? Comics, games, movies, music, and TV, they're gonna tell you everything you need. Superheroes or not, they got your back. They're gonna save the world of geeks. Games, movies, music, and TV, they're gonna tell you everything you need. Superheroes or not, they got your back. They're gonna save the world of This Week in Geek. This Week in Geek.
Well, it's a new year and it's time for another TurdOrTreasure. I wanted to get this out because we've had some reviews ready to go for quite some time. It's just a matter of, I was sick last week. Surprise, surprise. The flu that never ends. It was like, I had it for 2 weeks, and then it was gone for 2 weeks, and then it came back for 2 days out of the blue, nowhere. And I went, screw it. I'm going to record the show now. It's going to come out a little later than expected. I planned to have this out between Wednesday and Friday, but it's coming out on Monday. Big whoop. So I wanted to get it out before our main show comes out, because then we're going to get sort of all out of order of things, and that's no fun for anybody. So it's going to be pretty straightforward, rapid fire here. It's been an interesting while. Where I live, I rely on public transit to get everywhere, and there has been a transit strike for over a week, which means that the city's basically shut down. To give context, like, it's not like our region is super duper huge, but there's about 75,000 people that rely on public transit every single day. And that's just for at least one way. You know, there's multiple ridership beyond that. But 75,000 of that, there's a significant portion that are in the vulnerable sector or in like wheelchairs, disabled, that sort of deal. In my case, especially in the winter, I rely on mobility transit to get around when it's icy, because I have balance issues with my one leg. So I've effectively been shut down and marooned. We talked about it last week's show, that it was going to happen, and it's like, oh God, I hope the strike ends soon. So that's been interesting. Luckily, I've had enough food in the house and made sure that I bundled up, and that gave me time, I guess, to do some of these reviews where, there's a trilogy in here that takes some time to beat. So here is sort of the lineup for the reviews here. We've got a few movies here. We got The Color of Magic and Hogfather, which is a 2-pack from Mill Creek on Blu-ray, as well as Psycho's Path on DVD from Mill Creek on DVD. There's The Lighthouse from VVS Films on Blu-ray. And then we have Journey to the Savage Planet on PS4. 2 Sega Ages titles, Shinobi and Fantasy Zone. The trilogy I was talking about, which is the Atelier Dusk trilogy from Koei Tecmo on PS4. And the big one that I have been working on for a bit now, sort of interspliced between the other games, is Tokyo Mirage Sessions Sharp FE Encore. FE, I'm assuming, is Festival Edition, because it's a lot of times what they call their Persona and Shin Megami Tensei Deluxe versions. So it's sort of a chock-full review. Some of them are quickie reviews. The Tokyo Mirage Sessions is a bit longer and a little more in-depth, because it's one that I probably spent the most amount of time on. But I guess we may as well get into it. Without further ado, let's get into the reviews.
Basically using geeks.
Leave me alone, geek boy.
Holy shit, you geeks are badass.
I have a couple quick movies to talk about from Mill Creek that were sent over. One Blu-ray set that includes The Color of Magic and Hogfather, which are two of Terry Pratchett's novel adaptations for television movies that are split into 2 parts each. Back when that was still a pretty popular thing up until about a few years ago, having a lot of 2-part TV movies, and I kind of miss them. And the other is a DVD release called A Psycho's Path, starring Quentin Rampage Jackson, the UFC fighter. I'll quickly touch upon the Psycho's Path first. It's a DVD that has a digital copy that works with Movie Spree, Mill Creek's new streaming service. It's a fairly standard direct-to-video fare, bit of action, thriller, drama sort of mixed together. Pretty standard stuff. Entertaining enough. Worth a watch. I don't know particularly if it's a must go out and buy, but it is a discount release. They have an MSRP of $20 on it. It's going to be one of those ones that you probably find at Walmart for like $5, to be honest. I can't see most retailers actually asking $20 for it. Not the best release out there. Interestingly enough, the digital copy is actually better quality than the DVD. So the DVD is pretty standard 480i affair, but it's 720p in the digital copy, so it's actually a better experience to watch the streaming copy than it is the DVD. That's the first time I've ever encountered that. It might happen more and more as DVD copies come with streaming copies of their releases. But interesting enough, like if you're a fan of the UFC fighter / Rampage and Jackson, he's got a great personality. It's worth checking out. Other than that, it's just one of those put it on in the afternoon kind of movies. Now, by far the better of the two things that were sent over is the set that has The Color of Magic and Hogfather in it. I've not been super familiar with Terry Pratchett's work. I know he passed away a few years ago, and he has a huge following and wrote a ton of books. Very prolific. I rather enjoyed both of these TV movies, and it's leaving me more interested in watching more in the future. Now, these have been released on DVD before, but this is the first time, I believe, put on Blu-ray, especially in a set together. And the digital copy is a full HD copy as well, but the Blu-ray is a much higher quality because they did not put the movies together on a single disc. These are individual discs for each movie, and in such they didn't lose any quality. It maximizes the disc space usable, and overall has quite high visual fidelity for a television movie. And overall, I really enjoyed it. I think that Hogfather's a little better in my personal taste and opinion, but overall, if you're a fan of fantasy, fantasy overall, like it is either handled really well or really poorly. And I would say overall, both of these films are handled really well. Plus, you have the added bonus. Color of Magic has Tim Curry in there, and he's sorely missed now since he's had his stroke and not been able to do live action work. And it's a later work of his from 2008, so it's nice to see him. And he always hams it up, and really, really adds to the film in general. And I would say, as a set together, it's definitely worth picking up if you're a fan of fantasy. I can see, and you get a lot of value for it, honestly, because it's 4-hour movies, 2 4-hour movies put on here, split into 2 parts apiece. So totally worth it in my books. If you had to pick one of the two, definitely pick the Terry Pratchett dual pack here. But both are fairly enjoyable for what they are. Our friends at VVS Films sent over The Lighthouse, which I had an interesting history with. I had seen trailers for it, wanted to see it in theaters, then ended up coming down with like the flu or something right around the time it was in theaters and missed it entirely for its limited run. And then I missed the second run that it had at our indie house theater in town. And I was like, oh my God, am I ever going to get to see this? And well, I got a chance to check out the Blu-ray. And it is everything I was hoping for. A weird, twisted, almost, I guess, German expressionist silent film horror look, in that it's framed in the same aspect ratio, not the standard full screen aspect ratio, mind you, in that really old, almost like 1:1 ratio that they used to use in the silent film era, like a very Nosferatu sort of framing. Uses weird, stark, angular shots, the lighting and everything. It's very much like a Metropolis, a Nosferatu, Faust, a whole bunch of basically all those classic German silent expressionist films, although this has audio obviously, and it's edited and acted in such a way that it evokes a like 75-year-old horror film, if that makes any sense, with a bit of the weird Cthulhu-esque cosmic old god feel sort of added into it. And, kudos to the actors involved. I've wanted to see a movie made like this for such a long time. I was thoroughly impressed with it, and I kind of hope that more get made like this in the future. The Blu-ray itself has impeccable quality, audio, video wise. As far as special features, they're a little behind the scenes. Not a whole lot. It's not like a jam-packed special feature, romp on the disc itself, but it doesn't necessarily need to be. It would have been nice to see like a very extensive, I would have loved to have seen like a 1-hour documentary of the making of, but I almost like having a bit of the mystery left intact with this. So if you're a fan of film in general and horror, it's something to pick up because it's something so extremely different than anything we've seen in the last 50, 70 years. So it's not too often you can say something like that. So it's definitely worth checking out. I'll put a link in the description for it. VVS Films, I'm glad that they picked up the distribution of it up here in Canada, and I hope they pick up more pictures like this to show to everybody.
Those magnificent bastards! Color me kooky, but something very odd is going on around here.
You're not allowed to talk anymore.
Just a quick review here of Journey to the Savage Planet. I had a chance to play it on the PlayStation 4. It's also available on Xbox One and PC. It's one of the more interesting and colorful games. I think there may be some confusion because the title is similar to some others that have come out in the last year. But it is a unique experience. You play a character that is from a space organization, not the best space organization, space exploration organization out there, but definitely the fourth best. Anyway, you were sent to explore this planet that is supposedly unexplored before, but may or may not be. And it's full of very vibrant, colorful, almost like liquid gooey type plants, monsters, and aliens and everything. And it's an FPS shooter in a similar vein to like Metroid Prime, if that makes any sense. You go around and you're shooting, grappling, hooking around. And interspliced with it is there's like a narrative videos that sort of explain the backstory and what's happening and what's going on. And it's pretty enjoyable. It'll last you anywhere from 10 to 20-ish hours or so to play. And overall, I had a pretty good time with it. It differentiates itself from a lot of the other FPSs in the world right now, in that it's full of vibrant colors. It feels like something that would have come out during the GameCube era, back when color was still a thing. So that makes it fun on its own. The control is pretty smooth. There's some bugs here and there that could be sort of ironed out. But overall, it's a pretty good experience. If you like shooters, you like cartoony art styles, very vibrant, dynamic environments, then this is going to be one that you might want to check out. Our friends at Sega have sent over the latest 2 releases in the Sega Ages line for the Nintendo Switch. We've had a chance to check out everything previously from them in this line, and I was a little trepidatious on some of these because we're used to playing like the home console versions, but they're putting out a lot of these arcade versions that I've never had a chance to check out before, and usually that means they're really difficult. Well, these 2 releases are the original arcade version of Shinobi as well as Fantasy Zone. And while they are more difficult than I remember some home releases being, they've given a ton of options. M2 is always really good at adding a whole bunch of extra features into these releases when they port them. And they've added a whole bunch of difficulty settings so you can increase the amount of lives you have, continues. the points amounts that you need to continue. They've added unlockables. If you get a certain amount of points in each game, it'll unlock extra features and things you can do, or extra modes. And they're both pretty faithful adaptations. They now scale to widescreen where they wouldn't have before, and it seems to fit perfectly, and it's not a matter of stretching. They've actually just widened the actual viewing field, which is pretty sweet. Shinobi plays closer to the home release than I expected it would, while still retaining better video quality and better visuals than what the original version I played on Genesis did. Now, it's still a pretty challenging game. It takes a bit to get used to, but overall, kudos to them. Pretty good release. Fantasy Zone, I had only briefly played here and there. I think I had was it Tengen or somebody's release of it? The non-official release on the NES that was in the weird non-traditional cartridge. So I played that. That was my only real experience with Fantasy Zone before, and this was miles better. It is a challenging game, but the more you play, the more you learn the patterns, the better you get at it. And I can see why Fantasy Zone is so beloved by so many people. This is the game that has the most unlockables and most configurations that you can do with the difficulty settings, which is pretty good because you're going to need it. It can be quite difficult on the standard settings, but overall I had a really good time with both. So if you're looking to add more to your Genesis / Sega Ages collection, these two are more hits on their hands, because it's just a lot better than a lot of the other ports that come out on newer platforms. Anything that has the M2 stamp on it is pretty much gold. Okay, this review took a little time to get going, and I made sure that I crunched and played as much as I could because this is a 3-in-1 pack. This is the Atelier Dusk Trilogy, which includes DX versions or deluxe versions of 3 titles that were previously released in the last generation that now have been polished and brought up to modern standards on the PlayStation 4 and Switch. I have sent over a PS4 version from Koei Tecmo to check out, and I was pretty impressed. I played a few of the Atelier titles in the past, and they've always been more on the story and the alchemy and the mixing of ingredients and stuff than the actual traditional RPG save the world, run around adventuring sort of deal. And it's nice to have a separate series out there that does something a little different. Now, between these 3 titles, you're going to spend well over 100 hours playing. So I just wanted to be clear, I did not do like 100% completionist yet on all 3 titles, because that's going to take a long time. But I played well long enough into it to know whether or not they're good games. And if you're fans of JRPGs, then yes, these are actually good games. So the big thing you're going to want to hear is if you're a fan of the series, or if you're not a fan of the series and you're new to it, this might be a good way to get in, because you get 3 titles for the price of 1, basically. And as far as if you're a fan of the series, you're going to want to know, what makes this different? Should I actually go and upgrade? Well, what they've done is increase the visual fidelity of the graphics up to a higher standard. So now everything renders at 1080p minimum, on the Switch and PS4, versus whatever internal resolution they used before, but it's, a consistent higher resolution here. The gameplay is smoother. Traditionally, some of these titles, when they've been put on the Vita or the PS3, they've had some stuttering or frame rate issues. This was buttery smooth, like 60 frames per second the whole way through. No issues whatsoever. They've added like any bit of DLC that was in it previously has been included. Now it's sort of like, let's take all the bugs that we might have had in the previous titles, remove them all, package all 3 together, and release it as sort of a last hurrah, I guess, on this generation of platform, because I'm going to assume that whatever next release they have come out, maybe they might have one in the works that comes out still on the PS4, but for the most part, anything next that they're going to be working on will be coming out on the PS5. So it's sort of, I like when we get to this maturity level of the consoles where they start to packaged together these things where now I could actually go and get remastered editions for the $80 Canadian, $60 American, and I'm assuming what $50-$60 or $50-$60 UK pounds for these releases, and you get 2 or 3 titles in the best versions possible. So I've had a pretty good time playing these, and I do like how they have sort of arcs of 2 or 3 titles per series in the Atelier series that sort of flow together or have a cohesive sort of world they've built around themselves. Pretty cool. I'm enjoying it. It's a nice change of pace from most RPGs that I play. Worth checking out. I'll put a link in the description below for you. NIS America sent over their latest release, which is the Psikyo. I might be mispronouncing that. I'll have to double check. But the Psikyo. So I'm assuming that's Psikyo Shooting Stars Alpha. Now, there's going to be 2 releases of this. One a little later in the year, which is the beta. This is the alpha. And each one contains multiple classic 90s arcade shooters. So this one contains Strikers 1945, Strikers 1945 2, Strikers 1945 3, Soul Divide, Dragon Blaze, and Zero Gunner 2. Now, these are all in the later end of the arcades where we wouldn't have seen nearly as many of them. Like these had English versions, they would have been in arcades here, but circa 98, 99, not as many arcades were around anymore, let alone popping up with these new machines. So we very rarely would have probably played these. So it was great to actually check them out. They all have tons and tons of options when it comes to changing difficulty, backgrounds, rendering, audio, blah, 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 the whole shebang. Basically everything that you could have in a dip switch in an arcade machine is included here, plus more. Everything is modeled to fit the screen the way it needs to. The aspect ratio is handled well for each game. They're all colorful, play very well. They're all difficult, but for the most part, with most of the games, you have unlimited continues, so you can just keep playing till you get to the end, and then you eventually get better and better and work on your high score and make it so that you don't need to use as many continues, which is great. Because the most frustrating thing is when they port arcade games and then they make it so you can't change any difficulty and you just can't get past a certain point. There are some arcade games where you're just not going to get good enough. That's not the case with most of these. The hardest one here would be Dragon Blaze. No, actually not Dragon Blaze. That's the second hardest one. Soul Divide's probably the hardest. And it's also probably the least interesting of them. So I won't really go over that. It's just, it's sort of there. But the Strikers, the 3 series of that, each one gets better than the last. It's basically a vertical scrolling shooters. Where you pick your fighter jet, and you have special powers, you can use it as a bomb sort of deal. And when you get to the end, you'll fight a boss that halfway through the boss battle transforms into a mecha, and you destroy it, and so on and so forth. Pretty sweet. Great music in all of them. Now, Zero Gunner 2, and Dragon Blaze is basically the same as Strikers, only you're playing on riding a dragon. Cool. Zero Gunner 2 changes that up, and it offers a sort of 3D plane where you can tilt your ship in multiple directions around as it scrolls through. It scrolls to the right, up, down, left, right, every direction possible. So it's kind of a different take of where the evolution of shooters was going. And it uses 3D polygons to blow up, and it's pretty neat. It's a very advanced late arcade shooter. Overall, that one's quite fun too, but I still think the Strikers are the 3 Strikers games are the highlights of this 6-game pack. Overall, you're getting a pretty good value for a full retail game on this. I would say they're some of the more fun shooters I've actually ever played, so they're worth checking out. If you're unsure on the fence, check out a video on YouTube or 2 of people trying it out or a trailer for it. But I'm pretty excited for what Psikyo Shooting Stars, the sequel, like the beta one, will be when it comes out, because Alpha looks pretty stellar. So I'm assuming they have just another set coming out later that has the same amount of quality titles. So surprisingly good, worth checking out. It's interesting to see that NIS America is branching out of, instead of just doing mostly RPGs and adventure titles, they are throwing out a lot of these weird, quirky title starting in 2020, and I'm pretty happy for that. And I should note, it's actually, the sequel is going to be Psikyo Shooting Stars Bravo, not Beta. I got my A's and B's mixed up a little bit here, folks, but overall, both titles seem to be interesting. I'll keep an eye out for the second one. When it launches, we should get a review copy, and it'll be interesting to see what they're like. But so far, so good. I'm really liking the set.
This is a fair request, and I promise I will not judge any person only as a teenager, and that this is no more right than saying all teenagers are drunken dope addicts or glue sniffers.
It is time to talk about Tokyo Mirage Sessions, FE Encore, however you pronounce it, Sharp Encore, whatever, edition. This is the Nintendo Switch remastered version of the now very rare and often overlooked Nintendo Wii U title that was one of the few titles that I wanted to actually get a Wii U for. That and Xenoblade, which, you know, at this point it's probably going to get ported over, so that's fine. Now, Nintendo sent over a copy for me to play, and I got pretty absorbed into it and put in a few dozen hours or so to complete it. I played mostly on normal. Certain areas where I got stuck and it got hard, I was able to lower the difficulty to easy. Died a couple times, and then it unlocked a mode that was called friendly, making it even a little easier, but still challenging. Certain areas could still be pretty difficult. It just turned off one-hit kills that would wipe the party and let you restart without getting a game over screen, which is pretty cool. So what you get with this title is a mishmash of a little bit of Shin Megami Tensei, a little bit of the Persona spin-off series, and a little bit of Fire Emblem mixed together. The Fire Emblem aspect comes from your, I guess, personas. Your summons / personas are from the Fire Emblem series, and your hub world is sort of your base of operations hub world. The Bloom area is considered, I guess, Fire Emblem-y. And the Fire Emblem aspect only really comes in more near the end of the game in the last couple chapters. There's been some miscommunication about it saying there's 8 chapters. There's not 8 chapters. There's a prologue and an epilogue, which are very short and not really much to them. Those aren't really chapters. And then there's 6 main chapters of the game. In between each chapter, you get an intermission mode where you can do some level grinding, do side missions for people, learn side story elements of your characters, which doing them will actually unlock extra features and extra elements to the battle system. Like, for instance, if you do enough for some of the side characters, they will, who are not normally able to fight in battle with you, when you do a session attack, which is sort of a super move where you find somebody's weakness, exploit it, and then other members in your party can attack at the same time. These NPC characters that normally can't attack with you show up and attack and give an extra move in there, which can lead to extra bonuses. If you kill a character and then do a session attack on them, you'll get an overkill, which means every attack that you do on them either gives you more money or items. And the more you do in your session attack, the more rare items you can get, which then levels yourself up a little more. There's also a sort of dungeon in the hub world that allows you to do XP hunting or mastery hunting. Mastery hunting allows you to get skills from your weapons as they level up. So there's a way to sort of farm in here, and I was able to get my main character to level 99 within the first 10 hours of the game, while the rest of the party wasn't there yet. But it really it changed the dynamic, because while you might think it would be easier, certain aspects weren't. Because when you have a battle in the field with a savage encounter, they call it, which is an enemy you can't run away from until you get in the battle, and you either have to use an item to escape, or you can learn a spell that lets you escape any battle. Those battles level up to the level of your highest leveled character. So if the rest of your party is level 20 and you're level 99 as the main character, those encounters are level 99 and they'll wipe half your party almost immediately. So there's advantages and disadvantages to doing what I did. But as you get further in the game, the more you level up like this, the ball starts rolling and you start getting better and cooler items, and it's really neat. All the weapons have unique polygons and unique models for everything. The only downside I can say for this game is it's only voiced in Japanese, and I know that's what it was like on the original version, but at the same time, you'd figure for a large release like this, especially since yes, it's Nintendo putting it out, but Nintendo's put out mostly things in English now when they've done RPGs, but also it's the Atlus team working on it, and Atlus has had stellar English dubs for pretty much every title in the last 5 years or more. So it's kind of surprising they didn't go and give it an English dub, but that's just sort of nitpicking aside because you get used to it, but it would have been nice. Now, you basically go in the hub world of Tokyo and in Shibuya, and you're part of a, I guess, idol / singing movie star group, management group, and how it works is people are getting taken over by entities from Mirages from another dimension, which is the dimension of the Fire Emblem world, and it's sort of plunging the world into chaos, and the only way to get them out is singers have their own thing. Instead of a persona, it's performa. And they basically, it's like Power Rangers if it was all about singers and actors. And you're a bunch of teenage actors and singers, and you make a connection with some strong entities from the Fire Emblem world, and you have to go save the world one event at a time. All the while training and learning to do things like photo shoots, TV soap operas, commercials, and it's a very interesting world, and I had a pretty good time with the story, and it has some funny moments, some odd sort of choices with some of the animations as far as the character models. It does have, at key points in the chapters and events, completely animated, fully 2D animated anime scenes, which are pretty cool, little like music video movies put in there, pretty neat. Now, gameplay-wise, it's not the most complex RPG battle system, but it is one of the more satisfying ones. Once you get used to it, you get into a groove, you can pick up the game and play for a few minutes or a few hours, however you feel. I did really enjoy my playthrough. There is a New Game Plus mode, and the New Game Plus lets you carry in sort of whatever you want, unless you want to pick the hardest difficulty, and you can't take anything in with you, which unlocks after that, and I would not want to try that. Some people really like to punish themselves, I guess. Now, there is a true ending and a regular ending, and I won't go into details of which is which, even though this is an older game, but just to say that the regular ending is only different from the true ending in that it changes one still frame and adds one additional, I guess, in-game cutscene. And it does dynamically and dramatically change the outcome, but to get to that, you basically have to do what I figured. It's very simple. It's not like other Shin Megami Tensei games where it's very arbitrary and weird, things you have to do to get those true endings. This is a little more straightforward. Do all of the side missions not for every little random NPC character, but for all of the main cast and your NPCs at your company. Make sure you do that, which is 3 per person. And then before the very end of the game, make sure you go and chat with each of those people after the main big event happens, and before you finish the game, talk to each of these characters individually. Make sure you seek them out. Just talk to them. It doesn't unlock anything else. And once you've done that, that will trigger the proper true ending of the game, which is pretty cool. It doesn't give you anything fancy, except in New Game Plus, it gives you a new costume for the main character to wear, which is kind of cool if you're going to do that. And when you start New Game Plus, it actually, when you save your file, it says Season 2, which is interesting because this is all like you're living in the world of a television actor / musician / idol, which is pretty cool. So it's all keeping in line with that. The visuals are great. There's no stuttering. The load time is very minimal. I imagine this is overall a significant upgrade over the original version. And it's kind of surprising because the original was on a Blu-ray, so I'm not sure how big the actual disc would have been, but I'm assuming decent size. But this is about 10-ish gigs, so it's not super huge, but they found a way to make the game run at 1080p when docked, 720p, handheld, buttery smooth frame rate, never slowed down, never glitched. I only found a couple times where I had been playing for a very long time, and when I finished a battle, it just sort of hung for a little bit, and then it loaded everything. And it was maybe because I had played so long, maybe it was a memory thing or something. But overall, really, really smooth experience. I do plan on playing maybe the playthrough again, because in New Game Plus, they add an extra 2 missions apparently. One is like a bit of a story mission, and then one is like super secret, tough, ultimate boss at the end. And I'm like, maybe I'll try that. I don't know if I'm going to put in as many hours, but because I got to carry forward all my level 99 stats for all my characters, it might be worth it. And now that I know exactly what to do, I can just sort of power through it. So I'm very happy with it. I really hope Nintendo starts putting out more titles like this, especially something like the wonderful 101 or any other, really forgotten, rare, but really fun and critically acclaimed games from anything. Honestly, you could port some stuff from the GameCube, from the Wii. I'd love to see like The Last Story or something like that come over. We already know we're getting Xenoblade Chronicles, the original, over. It would be cool if we could get Xenoblade Chronicles X. Fingers crossed for that, because that's the best looking game on the Wii U. Very happy with the results of this. If you're an RPG fan, this is a must get. It's one of the best RPGs when it came out that year originally, and it's going to be probably one of the best RPGs of this year, and that's saying a lot.
Do you have any hobbies?
I collect spores, molds, and fungus.
Hold that thought. It's crapper time.
And that is going to do it for this week's show. Now, I'll be back, I think, in a day or two with Birdman on the main show. And I know he's got a couple of reviews ready to go on that. As far as for me, I have the PlayStation 4 back button attachment to talk about on there. And we're going to have all the standard stuff you come to get used to with us, with the wacky, weird news, as well as tech geek news, and sort of a catch up on how we're all doing. Winter's in full swing. Let's just hope this ends quickly. Because this constant hot, then cold, where we're like, it's plus 10 degrees out, then it's minus 10 degrees out. This is all Celsius, folks, so don't get your panties in a bunch. It is still wreaking havoc on everybody. People are getting the flu left and right. There's that brand new virus from China coming over. So everybody bundle up, stay away from people, and hopefully we can pass through this weird winter flu season without getting any more sick. So that's going to do it for me. I believe this week I'll be recording something with Ken over at This Anime, his review or talk podcast. That'll be fun. I'm not sure when we're doing Cambridge Chronicles again. We're going to see how we revamp things for 2020. I know Birdman has some stuff coming up with Nerd to the Third. We should be doing a collaboration sooner rather than later with Steve over at Ultra Geek and Geekcast Radio Network on Star Trek Picard, as well as the massive crossover event for Crisis on Infinite Earths on the CW verse. So that'll be fun, and got a few more little things up our sleeve coming up soon. So I think it's going to be a pretty fun-packed next few weeks. So that's going to do it for me. I'll talk to everybody later.
Well, that's our show.
All right, here's the deal. Every time you watch my show, I will send you $40.
Checks will not be honored.
You've been listening to This Week in Geek, your source for guaranteed nonsense or your money back. Tune in next week for more info on the most important things you didn't need to know. Check out our website at thisweekingeek.net and subscribe to our podcast through iTunes or any podcatcher. If you'd like to comment on this episode, head over to this episode's post at thisweekingeek.net and leave a comment through Facebook Connect. Follow us on Twitter at thisweekingeek.net and follow our Instagram at twig_official_podcast. Social media not your thing? send us an email at feedback@thisweekingeek.net. We'll see you next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
Just when you think this show is terrible, something wonderful happens.
What?
It ends.
I have to go. Somewhere there is a crime happening.
We've never missed a payment. Every month, I give Josh hundreds of dollars of my money, and then he writes you a rent check. Right, Josh?
I love them so much.
You love who?
The girls at Madame Kamei's Filipino Palace.
You've been spending our rent money on Filipino hookers.
They're not hookers. They're massage therapists.
I would massage your cock for money. There's a word for that. I think it's hooker.
You're a hooker!